Mia gasped, her lungs burning as if she had been drowning. Her eyes flew open, and a ceiling she didn't recognize came into view. Grand chandeliers, intricate gold molding, and expensive silk curtains that shimmered in the morning light. She sat up abruptly. This wasn't her dingy, one-room apartment. Her fingers brushed over the smooth, flawless skin of her face, a stark contrast to her usual rough hands. A diamond ring sparkled on her left hand, huge, expensive, and unfamiliar. Panic surged through her. Where am I? She swung her legs off the bed, only to freeze as she caught sight of the mirror across the room. The reflection staring back at her wasn't her own. The woman in the mirror had long, flowing dark hair, striking blue eyes, and delicate features that screamed wealth and power. The same face now belonged to her. A sharp knock on the door made her flinch. "Miss Sinclair, breakfast is ready," a polite voice called from the other side. Sinclair? The name struck her like lightning. Eleanor Sinclair, the heiress of a Sinclair fortune. Mia's pulse pounded. She had seen Eleanor's face in magazines and on the news, cold, poised, and untouchable. But how had she ended up inside her body? She forced herself to stay calm. If people believed she was Eleanor, she had to act like it. At least until she figured out what was happening. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the door and opened it. A maid stood there, bowing slightly. "Miss, your fiancé is waiting for you downstairs." Fiancé? A terrible thought struck her. Eleanor was engaged. Who was she engaged to? As she walked down the marble staircase, a man stood near the dining table, his sharp gaze locking onto her. Victor Lancaster. Tall, with jet-black hair and a presence that screamed danger, he was as breathtaking as he was terrifying. His lips curled into a small smile as he approached. "Good morning, darling. You look different today." Mia's heart pounded. She had no idea how to act around this man. Was he an enemy or an ally? Before she could react, he leaned in, whispering near her ear. "You're acting strange, Eleanor. Is something wrong?" Mia forced a smile. "No, just feeling a little off today." Victor studied her for a moment before pulling her chair out. "Sit. You need to eat." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her fork. The food was luxurious, too luxurious for someone like her, who had grown up barely affording a meal. How was she supposed to survive in a world she didn't belong to? Then, as she reached for a napkin, a folded piece of paper fell onto her lap. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The message was short, terrifyingly short. "They killed me. Run before they kill you too." Mia's blood ran cold. Eleanor hadn't just disappeared. She had been murdered. And now, Mia was living in the dead woman's body, with her killers watching her every move. Mia gripped the note so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "They killed me. Run before they kill you too." Her pulse pounded in her ears. The words felt like icy fingers wrapping around her throat. Eleanor Sinclair, the real Eleanor, had been murdered. And whoever had killed her still thought she was Eleanor. Mia forced herself to breathe. She couldn't react, not here, not in front of him. Across the table, Victor watched her carefully, his piercing gaze analyzing every move she made. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes sent a chill down her spine. Does he know? Something wrong. Victor's deep voice was smooth, laced with false concern. Mia quickly folded the note under the table, shoving it into her dress pocket. She managed a weak smile. "Just a headache. I didn't sleep well." Victor smirked. "You do seem different today." Mia swallowed hard. "Careful. Don't slip up." "Perhaps you need rest," he continued, his fingers trailing lazily along the rim of his coffee cup. "Or maybe you're just remembering something?" Her breath hitched. Was that a test? Mia reached for her water, hiding her shaking hands. "No. Just feeling a little out of it today." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Who was he really? A loving fiancé, or one of Eleanor's murderers? Mia barely made it back to Eleanor's bedroom before she let her panic surface. She shut the door, locking it behind her. Her heart pounded as she pulled out the note, reading it over and over again. Who wrote this? Who killed Eleanor? And the biggest question of all, why am I in her body? Mia tore through the room, searching for anything Eleanor might have left behind. If she had suspected she was in danger, she must have hidden something. She yanked open drawers, checked under the bed, even flipped through Eleanor's expensive-looking books. Nothing. Then, her eyes landed on the massive walk-in closet. Something about it felt off. Mia stepped inside, running her fingers along the walls. At first, she found nothing unusual until her fingertips brushed against a tiny ridge near the back panel. Click. A hidden compartment slid open. Mia's breath caught in her throat. Inside was a small, black notebook, tucked away as if Eleanor had wanted to keep it secret. Hands trembling, she flipped it open. Page 1. They're planning something. Even Victor is involved. Her stomach dropped. Victor was in on it. She turned the page. Page 2. Father is hiding something from me. I think he knows the truth about my mother's death. Eleanor's mother had died years ago, an accident, according to the official reports. But was it really? Mia kept flipping. Page 10. Someone is following me. I don't know who I can trust anymore. The last entry was the worst. Page 15. If anything happens to me, find Ethan Cole. He will help you. Mia's hands shook as she stared at the name. Ethan Cole. Who was he? A friend? A detective? Someone Eleanor had trusted? And more importantly, was he still alive? Mia had no choice. She had to find this Ethan Cole. But first, she had to survive long enough to do it. That meant playing the role of Eleanor Sinclair flawlessly. She straightened her dress, tucked the notebook away, and forced a calm, confident expression onto her face. When she stepped outside her bedroom, Victor was waiting for her in the hallway. His lips curled into a smirk. Feeling better? Mia gave a practiced smile. Much. Victor leaned in, brushing a kiss against her cheek. She fought the urge to flinch. Good, he murmured. Because we have a meeting with your father. Mia's blood ran cold. She had just learned Eleanor suspected her father was hiding something. And now, she had to face him. Mia kept her posture straight as she followed Victor down the grand staircase. Every step felt like she was walking into a trap. Eleanor's father, Charles Sinclair, was a powerful man, known for his ruthless business empire. And, according to Eleanor's secret notebook, he was hiding something. Victor placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward the study. The touch sent a wave of unease through her. Is he keeping me close to protect me, or to make sure I don't escape? The double doors swung open, revealing a lavish office. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the scent of old leather and expensive cigars lingered in the air. At the center of it all sat Charles Sinclair. His piercing gray eyes locked onto her the moment she entered. Calculating. Cold. Dangerous. Mia forced a polite smile. Father. Charles studied her for a long moment, his fingers tapping against the polished wood of his desk. You've been acting differently, he said smoothly. Is something wrong? Mia kept her expression neutral. No, just feeling a little off lately. His gaze sharpened. Was he testing her? Victor took a seat beside her, draping his arm casually over the chair. The gesture felt possessive. Charles finally spoke again. Your engagement party is in 2 weeks. I expect you to act accordingly. Mia's stomach twisted. Engagement party? Victor smirked. Of course. Eleanor has been looking forward to it. Mia bit back a response. Had she? Charles leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully. Good. Because this marriage is important. Important? For love, or for power? Mia forced a nod. Of course. The meeting ended quickly, but as Mia turned to leave, Charles spoke again. One more thing. She stopped, her heart hammering. Charles's gaze was unreadable. Stay away from Ethan Cole. Mia went rigid. He knows. She turned slowly, forcing an innocent expression. Who? Charles's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Don't play games with me, Eleanor. That man is dangerous. Dangerous? Or did he know something Charles didn't want her to find out? Mia dipped her head. I understand. But inside, her determination only grew stronger. Mia wasted no time. The moment she was alone, she pulled out Eleanor's notebook, flipping to the last entry again. If anything happens to me, find Ethan Cole. He will help you. If Eleanor had trusted him, then Mia had no choice. She had to track him down. She made her way to the library, where she knew she wouldn't be disturbed. She powered on Eleanor's laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she searched for his name. Seconds later, she found him. Ethan Cole, private investigator. He had once been a detective, but 3 years ago, he had left the force under mysterious circumstances. Now, he ran his own firm. Mia quickly memorized the address. She had to meet him tonight. But as she shut the laptop, she felt it again. A presence. Someone was watching her. Her heart pounded as she turned her head slightly, catching a reflection in the glass window. Victor stood in the doorway. He smiled, but his eyes were anything but warm. Looking up old friends? He asked, his tone casual, but there was an edge to it. Mia's mind raced. Had he seen? She smiled. Just reminiscing. Victor stepped closer, his fingers brushing her hair. Good, he murmured. Because you don't need anyone else. The words felt like a warning. Mia swallowed hard. She had to be careful. One wrong move, and she wouldn't live long enough to meet Ethan Cole. Mia waited until the house was silent. It was nearly midnight when she slipped out of her room, dressed in simple, dark clothes that wouldn't attract attention. She couldn't trust anyone. Not Charles. Not Victor. Especially not Victor. She moved quietly through the grand estate, her heart hammering as she reached the side door. If anyone caught her sneaking out, she would have no excuse. But she had to do this. She had to find Ethan Cole. Mia hailed a taxi and gave the address she had memorized. As the car pulled away from the estate, she let out a slow breath. It was the first time she had been alone since waking up in Eleanor's body. But the city at night wasn't comforting. Every shadow felt like a pair of eyes. By the time she reached Ethan's office, a small, rundown building in a quiet part of town, she was already on edge. She hesitated for only a moment before knocking on the door. Nothing. She knocked again, firmer this time. Still nothing. Her pulse quickened. Was he dead too? Then, just as she was about to turn away, the door creaked open. A tall man stood in the dim light. Dark hair, sharp features, a 5 o'clock shadow. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto hers immediately. Mia's breath caught. Ethan Cole. Who are you? He asked, his voice low and rough. Mia hesitated. What if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was part of whatever had killed Eleanor? But before she could answer, his gaze darkened. You're Eleanor Sinclair. Mia's stomach flipped.
No.
He thought she was really Eleanor. Before she could correct him, Ethan's expression hardened. You should be dead. Mia's heart slammed against her ribs. He knows. She took a cautious step back, ready to run if she had to. Ethan didn't move. He just watched her, his sharp gaze analyzing every inch of her. Tell me something, he murmured, stepping closer. Are you really Eleanor Sinclair? Mia's breath hitched. This was her chance. She had to decide, lie and pretend to be Eleanor, or tell him the truth. If he really had trusted Eleanor, then maybe. She swallowed hard. I don't know how to explain this, she admitted. But I'm not Eleanor. I woke up in her body a few days ago. I found a letter warning me that she was murdered. And now, I think they're going to kill me too. For a long, tense moment, Ethan said nothing. Then, he exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Mia's hands clenched. You believe me? Ethan looked at her like she was the biggest headache he'd ever encountered. I don't believe in miracles or body swapping, he said. But I do know one thing. He stared at her, his expression serious. Eleanor Sinclair is dead. Mia's stomach twisted. How do you know that? Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he locked the door behind them. Because, he said grimly, I was the one investigating her murder. Mia sat across from Ethan as he poured himself a glass of whiskey. He didn't offer her one. Not that she would have taken it. You were investigating her? She asked. Ethan took a slow sip before answering. Eleanor contacted me a few months ago. She was looking into her mother's death. Thought it wasn't an accident. Mia's breath caught. That was in her notebook. And, she pressed. Ethan sighed. And she was right. Her mother's death wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. Mia's mind raced. A cover-up for what? Ethan hesitated before pulling out a file from his desk drawer. He slid it toward her. Mia opened it, and her blood ran cold. Inside were photos of Eleanor's mother, before and after the accident. But the real horror was the medical report. Mia's hands trembled as she read the words. Cause of death: poisoning. Her mother hadn't died in an accident. She had been murdered. Mia looked up at Ethan, her pulse racing. Who did this? Ethan leaned back in his chair. That's the question Eleanor wanted answered. And now she's dead too, Mia whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. Which means you're next. Mia's hands curled into fists. She had been given a second chance in this body, and she would not let Eleanor's killers win. She lifted her chin, determination burning in her eyes. Then let's finish what she started. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then, finally, he gave a slow, approving nod. All right, princess, he said, smirking slightly. Let's get to work. Ethan watched her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. You're serious about this? He asked. Mia nodded. Eleanor died looking for the truth. If I don't finish what she started, I'll be next. Ethan exhaled sharply. You really don't remember anything from Eleanor's life? Mia hesitated. I only have her notes. Ethan studied her, his gaze sharp. Then he grabbed another file from his desk and tossed it onto the table. Then start learning. Mia opened it. Inside were documents, photographs, and detailed reports. She recognized Victor's name, along with Charles Sinclair's. But one name caught her attention. Alexander Blackwood. Who is he? She asked, pointing to the name. Ethan leaned against his desk. Eleanor suspected him of working with your father. But she never found proof. Mia's stomach twisted. Working with him for what? Ethan hesitated. Then, he flipped to another page in the file, showing her a list of bank transactions. Mia's breath caught. Millions of dollars had been moved offshore, all under fake business names. And, at the bottom of the list was Eleanor's name. This is why she died, Ethan said. She was getting too close. Mia clenched her fists. Charles had killed his own daughter to protect the secret. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Then we need to take him down. Ethan smirked. Not so fast, princess. This isn't just about exposing him. You need to survive first. Mia took a deep breath. Then where do we start? Ethan's gaze darkened. With Victor. The next morning, Mia returned to the Sinclair estate. As soon as she stepped inside, Victor was waiting for her. Where were you last night? He asked smoothly. Mia forced a calm expression. I needed fresh air. Victor's eyes gleamed. Lying isn't your strong suit, Eleanor. Mia's heart pounded. Did he know? Before she could speak, Victor reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You should be careful, he murmured. You have a bad habit of wandering into dangerous places. Mia swallowed hard. Was that a warning or a threat? She forced a smile. Noted. Victor studied her for a moment longer, then smiled. Good girl. Mia's skin crawled as he turned and walked away. She needed to move faster. She needed to bring him down first. And she knew exactly where to start. That night, Mia met Ethan again. He had found something new. There's a charity gala tomorrow, he told her. Victor will be there. So will Alexander Blackwood. Mia's breath caught. The man Eleanor had suspected. If we get close enough, Ethan continued, we might find out how deep Victor's involvement really is. Mia nodded, determination burning in her chest. Then Ethan smirked. But there's one problem. Mia frowned. What? He leaned in. You need a date. Mia stiffened. And you're volunteering? Ethan shrugged. It's either me or Victor. Your choice. Mia hesitated. Going with Victor meant she would be watched closely. But going with Ethan would mean declaring war. She took a deep breath. Fine, she said. We go together. Ethan grinned. Then let's give them a show, princess. Mia's heart pounded. Tomorrow, the game truly began. The night of the charity gala arrived sooner than Mia expected. She stood in front of the mirror, dressed in an elegant black gown that hugged her curves. A diamond necklace rested against her collarbone, its cold weight a reminder of the role she had to play. Ethan, standing behind her, let out a low whistle. Not bad, princess. Mia rolled her eyes. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Ethan smirked. Just don't trip in those heels. You need to look like you belong in this world. Mia exhaled slowly. I don't just need to look like I belong. I need to win tonight. Ethan's smirk faded. Then stick close to me. Victor and Alexander Blackwood will be watching. Mia met his gaze in the mirror. Let them watch. The moment Mia and Ethan stepped into the grand ballroom, whispers started. Eleanor Sinclair was never seen with anyone but Victor. Yet here she was, walking hand in hand with a mystery man. Victor stood across the room, his glass of wine frozen midair as his sharp gaze locked onto Mia. His lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Mia's skin prickled, but she refused to show fear. Instead, she smiled back. Ethan leaned in, whispering in her ear, You're playing with fire. Mia's fingers tightened around his arm. Then let's burn them first. Mia's real target tonight was Alexander Blackwood. If Eleanor had been investigating him, then he was involved. She scanned the room until she found him. Tall. Silver-streaked hair. An air of calculated control. Alexander Blackwood was already watching her. Mia excused herself from Ethan and approached. Mr. Blackwood, she greeted smoothly. He smiled, though it never reached his eyes. Eleanor, I wasn't expecting to see you tonight, with such interesting company. Mia tilted her head. And I wasn't expecting you to be so interested in my personal life. Blackwood chuckled, but his gaze turned sharp. Be careful who you trust, Eleanor. Mia kept her expression calm, but inside, her mind raced. Did he suspect that she wasn't really Eleanor? Before she could respond, Victor suddenly appeared beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. His grip was possessive. Controlling. Darling, he murmured. I was looking for you. Mia's heart pounded. She was trapped between two powerful men, one who might have murdered Eleanor, and one who knew more than he let on. But she wasn't the same woman they thought she was. She was playing her own game now. And she wasn't going to lose. Victor's grip on Mia's waist tightened slightly, just enough to remind her of the control he thought he had. She forced a smile, tilting her head toward him. Looking for me? She asked sweetly. How charming. Alexander Blackwood watched the exchange with amusement, his sharp eyes flickering between them. Victor, you never told me Eleanor had such a rebellious streak, he mused. Victor chuckled, though his fingers dug deeper into Mia's side. You know how she is, he said. Always looking for trouble. Mia swallowed down her nerves. If she acted too different, Victor might suspect something. She placed her hand over his and laughed lightly. You know me too well. Alexander's expression didn't change, but Mia caught the slight flicker of doubt in his gaze. He's testing me. She needed to turn the tables before she lost control. Mia lifted her champagne glass and smiled. I was just having the most fascinating conversation with Mr. Blackwood. He was warning me about trust. Victor's gaze darkened. Was he? Alexander simply chuckled. A friendly piece of advice. Mia tilted her head. Of course. After all, trust can be so deadly, don't you think? Alexander's smile froze for a split second. Just enough for Mia to confirm it. He knew something. But before she could push further, Victor leaned down and whispered in her ear. Let's dance. It wasn't a request. Mia's pulse pounded as he led her onto the dance floor. The moment Victor pulled her close, Mia's breath hitched. His grip on her waist was firm, too firm, as he guided her across the ballroom. You've been acting different, he murmured. Mia forced a small laugh. How so? Victor's fingers brushed the back of her neck, sending a cold shiver down her spine. You used to be so predictable, he said. Now you're a mystery. Mia's heart raced. Did he know? Had he figured out she wasn't really Eleanor? She needed to take back control. Mia smirked. Maybe I got bored of being predictable. Victor chuckled, though his grip on her waist tightened dangerously. Or maybe, he murmured, you're hiding something. Mia swallowed hard. The game was getting dangerous, and she was running out of time. Just when Mia thought she might lose control, a strong hand suddenly grabbed Victor's shoulder. Ethan. Mind if I cut in? He asked smoothly. Victor's jaw clenched. We're in the middle of something. Ethan smirked. I know. That's why I'm interrupting. For a moment neither man moved. Then, to Mia's shock, Victor let her go. But before he stepped away, he leaned down and whispered in her ear. I'll see you soon, darling. A shiver ran down Mia's spine as he walked off. She turned to Ethan, her heart still racing. You're late, she muttered. Ethan smirked, pulling her close. You looked like you needed saving. Mia let out a slow breath, resting her hand on his shoulder. More than you know. But deep down, she knew. Victor wasn't done with her yet. And next time he wouldn't let her go so easily. Mia's hands trembled slightly as she and Ethan swayed on the dance floor. He knows something, she whispered. Ethan's grip on her waist tightened slightly. Then we have to move fast. Mia exhaled slowly, forcing herself to focus. Alexander Blackwood is hiding something. I saw it in his eyes when I mentioned trust. Ethan smirked. So, we rattle the cage. Mia met his gaze. How? Ethan's expression darkened. We break into his office. Mia's stomach twisted. That's risky. Ethan leaned in, his lips near her ear. So, is staying here, while Victor watches you like a hawk. Mia's breath hitched. She stole a glance at Victor across the room. He was still watching her, his gaze like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Her fingers curled into Ethan's jacket. Then let's do it tonight. A few hours later, Mia and Ethan stood in the shadows behind Blackwood Enterprises. The towering skyscraper loomed above them, its glass windows reflecting the city lights. Are you sure about this? Ethan asked. Mia nodded. I need answers. Ethan smirked. Then let's get them. Using a stolen access card, Ethan bypassed security, leading Mia through the empty hallways. When they reached Alexander Blackwood's office, Ethan picked the lock within seconds. The door clicked open. Mia stepped inside, her pulse pounding. It was a sleek, minimalist office. Too clean. Too perfect. She immediately went to the desk, searching through files. And then, she found it. A hidden safe behind a painting. Ethan whistled. Jackpot. Mia's fingers trembled as she reached for the keypad. Eleanor had been close to something. If she was right, then inside the safe was the truth that had gotten her killed. She took a deep breath and started entering possible codes. Then, suddenly, the office door clicked open. Mia and Ethan froze. A shadow loomed in the doorway. And then, a smooth, familiar voice filled the room. I was wondering when you'd come looking, Eleanor. Mia's blood ran cold. Alexander Blackwood. Alexander stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His gaze flickered to the open safe. You always were persistent, he mused. Mia forced a small smile, keeping her voice steady. You know me. Alexander chuckled, but there was no amusement in his eyes. Yes, he said. I do. Mia's pulse pounded. Did he know? Did he suspect the truth? Ethan shifted beside her, his body tensed, ready to act. Alexander smirked. Go on. Open the safe. Mia hesitated. Why? She asked. Alexander's smile widened. Because I want to see your face when you finally understand what you've been chasing. A chill ran down Mia's spine. She turned back to the safe, her fingers moving mechanically. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a single folder. Mia's breath caught as she picked it up, flipping it open. And what she saw made her heart stop. It was a medical report. Her hands trembled as she read the first few lines. And then, at the bottom, name, Eleanor Sinclair. Status, deceased. Mia's breath hitched. This was proof. Official proof that Eleanor had died. Alexander Blackwood knew. And he had been waiting for her. She looked up, heart pounding. Alexander smiled. Welcome to the real game, my dear. Mia's hands tightened around the folder, her mind racing. This was proof that Eleanor was dead. Official, undeniable proof. So, why was she standing here? Why did everyone think she was Eleanor? Ethan tensed beside her, his body coiled like a spring. What the hell is this? Alexander Blackwood's smile didn't falter. An inconvenient truth, wouldn't you say? Mia's throat felt dry. Why do you have this? Alexander's eyes gleamed with amusement. Because I was the one who signed off on Eleanor's death. Her blood turned to ice. She forced herself to stay calm, gripping the folder tighter. You're lying. Alexander chuckled, stepping closer. Am I? And yet here you are, standing in her body, living her life. Tell me, Eleanor, what do you remember about your past? Mia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her past. She knew who she was. A poor woman struggling to survive, waking up in a rich heiress's body. But before that, flashes of memories hit her all at once. A hospital room, machines beeping, someone whispering, she won't survive. Pain. A deep, aching pain in her chest. And then, darkness. Mia swayed on her feet. What was real? What was a lie? Ethan grabbed her wrist. Mia, we need to go. Now. Alexander smirked. Ah. So your little bodyguard knows your real name. Mia's breath caught. Alexander knew. He knew she wasn't Eleanor. And yet, he hadn't exposed her. Not yet. Mia steadied herself, shoving the folder into Ethan's hands. We're leaving. Alexander didn't stop them. Instead, he leaned back against his desk, watching them with a predatory glint in his eyes. I suggest you read that very carefully, he murmured. And when you're ready for the truth, come find me. Mia didn't wait to hear more. She turned and ran. Back at Ethan's apartment, Mia sat on the couch, staring at the folder in her lap. Ethan paced in front of her. This is insane. A forged death certificate? What is Blackwood playing at? Mia didn't answer. She slowly flipped through the pages, medical reports, official documents, signatures. And then she found it. A photo of Eleanor Sinclair. Except, it wasn't Eleanor. It was her. Mia's heart pounded. This doesn't make sense. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Mia turned the paper around, showing him the photo. This is me, she whispered. Ethan's expression darkened. That's impossible. Mia's hands trembled. What if I wasn't just in Eleanor's body? What if I was Eleanor all along? Ethan's eyes widened. You mean? Mia clutched the folder, her mind spinning. What if she had always been Eleanor Sinclair? What if the poor woman she remembered, the one struggling to survive, was never real? What if her memories had been altered? And if that was true, who did this to her? Ethan sat beside her, his voice low. Mia, whatever the truth is, we'll figure it out. But right now, we have a bigger problem. Mia exhaled shakily. Victor. Ethan nodded. He won't let this go. He knows something's off with you. And if Blackwood is playing games, Victor might already be making his next move. Mia clenched her fists. No more running. No more waiting for answers to come to her. If she wanted the truth, she would have to take it. She looked at Ethan, determination blazing in her eyes. It's time to end this. They arrived at the Sinclair estate under the cover of darkness. Victor was waiting. He stood in the grand hall, a glass of wine in his hand, as if he had been expecting them. Mia, he greeted smoothly. Or should I say, Eleanor. Mia's fists clenched. No more games, Victor. I know you had Eleanor killed. Victor's smile never wavered. Did you now? Ethan stepped forward. We have proof. Victor chuckled, swirling his wine. And yet, here you are, still breathing. Mia's breath caught. What did he mean? Victor tilted his head. Tell me, Mia. If Eleanor Sinclair is dead, then who are you? Mia's mind reeled. She thought she had the answers, but what if she was wrong? What if the truth was something far worse? Victor took a sip of his wine, then smirked. Let me tell you a story. Mia stiffened. A long time ago, There was a girl who had everything: money, power, influence. But she was naive. She trusted the wrong people. Victor placed his glass down. So they erased her. Mia's pulse pounded. Victor's gaze darkened. Not by killing her. That would be too easy. Ethan tensed beside her. What did you do? Victor smiled. We rewrote her. Mia's stomach dropped. Her memories, her identity, everything she knew about herself was a lie. Mia's breath came in short gasps.
No.
No, that couldn't be true. Could it? Victor sighed. It was a shame, really. Eleanor Sinclair could have been great. But instead, she had to be reborn. Mia's heart stopped. Reborn. Not in another body. Not as someone else. But as herself, stripped of everything she once was. Her legs felt weak. She had never been someone else. She had always been Eleanor Sinclair. They had just made her forget. Mia's eyes burned with rage. You stole my life. Victor smirked. And yet, you came back for it. Mia's hands clenched into fists. Not anymore. She wasn't just taking back her life. She was ending his. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Victor Sinclair arrested for fraud and attempted murder. Mia stood in front of the mirror, her reflection no longer a stranger. She remembered everything now. The betrayal.
The pain.
The lies. And the people who had tried to erase her. But they had failed. Ethan walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You did it, he murmured. Mia leaned back against him. We did it. Ethan smirked. So, Miss Sinclair, what's next? Mia turned, a fire burning in her gaze.
Now.
She smiled. I take back everything that was stolen from me. And this time, no one would stop her.